Welcome to Happy Talks with Dr. Alice and Donovan. Dr. Alice Fong is a holistic naturopathic doctor and founder of Amour de Soi Wellness. And Donovon Jenson is a software engineer and founder of HowToHappy.com. Together, they're out to cause more happiness in the world.
Hello, everyone. Welcome to Happy Talks. We have a very special episode today. It is our 100th episode. Woohoo! That's right. Yes, 100th episode, which is kind of a big deal. Not all podcasts make it to the 100 episode mark, but we did. And we survived the pandemic of all things. So today we're just going to reflect back on the last 2 years. We invited some of our past guests to share their thoughts about happiness and happy talks. So we'll cut to some of those clips. And we're just going to talk about what's next for Happy Talks. And we're going to just party and have a good time. So let's get this party rolling and celebrate. Let's start with Donovan. You know, we began this journey 2 years ago, right before the pandemic. We've been through, we've been in the pandemic for 2 years is how I track how long we've been doing Happy Talks for. So what are your thoughts about how we've evolved as a show?
Yeah, well, I feel really lucky that we had a chance to meet in person once
know,
before
right?
the
One
whole
time
world
in
fell
person.
apart. Yeah,
That's true.
but this show has been a really nice way to just sort of discuss topics of interest with someone that I feel also knows a lot about a lot of this stuff and helps me see some different angles. It's also been a really awesome opportunity to just meet a lot of really interesting people and hear their stories and sort of the things that help drive happiness for them. I think, over the 2 years, we have more and more honed in on sort of the types of messages that we want to get across and the types of people we want to interact with and share out to everyone. And overall, I just feel like it's continuing to get more and more polished and a little bit more pointed. I think I still ramble quite a bit, but not so bad as when we started. So that's some of my initial thoughts. Be curious what evolution you've sort of seen or felt.
I agree. I feel like we've evolved a lot and we've definitely gotten into a rhythm of working together on this show. And I feel like I've become, I'm not saying I'm a perfect angel by any means, but I think I'm getting better. I think we're both getting better at interviewing people, talking to people, and I hope I'm getting better at not being so robust with my filler words like a lot. I think I do. But when I look back at our earlier episodes, sometimes I think, ooh, it's a little cringy. I said that word way too many times, but now I feel comfortable watching back our previous episodes, thankfully. And I think, wow, we have some really good stuff. People should really listen to us, kind of a thing, instead of is anyone going to listen to us? So I think that's evolved in my mindset, that thinking that we actually have really, really good content, and it's a matter of just having people discover us more.
Yeah, well, one of the things you mentioned really stuck out is just comfort, right? It just feels a lot more comfortable than when we started, not only just our conversations, but also kind of the flow of interactions between us and having guests on and being able to talk to them in a way that feels comfortable, as opposed to okay, we got a guest. So what does that mean? What are we supposed to do? It feels right. It feels a lot more comfortable.
Yes, yeah, totally.
Yeah, that feels much better and smoother now.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, and I would say that I feel like the quality of guests has improved. We've had so many amazing experts, and we'll show you some clips of some of our favorite past guests later on in this episode. But what I really enjoy and appreciate is that we've evolved in a way that we can really be comfortable talking about any topic, even though we don't know what we're going to say a lot of the time. Be honest, it's kind of nice to, for those who are new to us or new listeners to us, back in the early days, we kind of struggled with just being able to, well, we had like a list of ideas and topics, and we always were like, we don't know what we're going to say, but for whatever reason, we were able to find a way to talk. Or actually, no, reference back, but this is the point I was going to try to make, is that like initially, for those who don't know us, why we started Happy Talks in the first place was Donovan and I both have an interest in happiness and well-being and personal development. And we both had a desire to create more content. That was really literally the original goal. And I know for myself, I wasn't consistent at putting out content. I was kind of one of those business owners that was like, oh God, I don't want to, don't make me. But in doing Happy Talks, it's actually an enjoyable process for me to actually have a conversation with the amazing Donovan and converse, instead of me just creating content just on my own. It's a struggle to do it by myself. So it's just so much easier and relaxed. And I think that allows us to come off more authentic and just real. And hopefully people get value out of it. So yeah, and it doesn't require a million hours of prep work. We just come on the show. We just be our authentic self. We share from our personal experiences, what we've learned. And, we invite experts to fill in the gaps of the things we don't know. So,
yeah. I agree. That's definitely been one of the nicest transitions for me personally, is from feeling like I needed to do this really structured style of sort of engagement or conversation or creating some sort of content, and falling back into something more human, which is just finding someone else or other, when we have guests, other people who have expertise in similar areas but different angles, and just having a genuine conversation, as opposed to this more like, okay, let's make sure we hit bullet point A and B and C and do it in exactly this way. And if we forget, A part 3, like we have to go back and redo the whole thing. It's been very nice to just tap into something a little bit more fluid.
Right. Yes. It's way more organic. It's more casual. And yeah, there might be some things where we're not super concise, but in a way I like it so much more, because, we have an editor who can cut out the things that don't seem to come across as well as we'd like to, but also that, I don't have to, like, I think I might have referenced this in our first episode. I don't remember. But I remember, like, when I first started creating content, like video content specifically, I was just so nervous in front of the camera. I was a perfectionist. It took me like 4 hours to get like a 2-minute video created. And I was just like, I can't do this. This doesn't work. So the way we do it is just like, we commit to an hour a week. We just hop on, and it's really, a conversation with a friend about like topics that we enjoy and discuss and that we are passionate about. So yeah, I would be curious, Donovan, do you have any favorite moments or moments that just really stand out in your mind from our previous episodes, whether it was just the two of us or with a guest? Can you think of?
I know, like off the top of my head, some of the things that stand out the most are the times when we've been asked to do particular exercises. Mm-hmm. And it's been a while for some of them, but one that I can't quite remember the details, but I kind of remember the experience, was the conversation cards, right? And going through sort of that like structured conversation, but in a way with extra parameters around, just like, went from like structured to open to structured to open. And with where we were at in the podcast at the time, it just really stuck out to me as like, oh, wow, this could be, a really nice way to get to know someone. And it's sort of this semi-structured, semi-fluid sort of interaction. And then one of the other ones that I remember distinctly is the non-dominant handwriting.
That stands out in my mind too.
Yeah, because I really had a hard time. I already have a hard time with art. So the drawing part was really, really rough. And I think it was a good exercise to just kind of like free up the mind a little bit. Those are some of the ones. There's many really cool and interesting things that we've done on the show and interactions we've had with guests, but those are two that come top of mind. What about on your end?
Yeah, I actually was gonna point actually both the episodes that you referenced. The first one, for those who want to go back to our earlier episodes, that's with Tom Glasser, I believe. Check out that episode. You can always reference back to some of those episodes we're talking about. I enjoyed that because it was interactive, and I think that was one of our earlier episodes that propelled us to really want to have guests that could not just talk in like theories and ideas, but actual like practical tools to help people be happier. So I always loved that. There was that one. There was Kristen Taylor was just helping us be more mindful with our breath work. The left hand, I initially was like, this sounds super weird, but we like to keep an open mind, and we did the exercise, and I was honestly blown away by what came up for me, and I had like an emotional experience by that. So that one definitely stands out in my mind. But what I love about our guests as a whole is I love that each person we brought on has a very unique story and a story to tell. The other episode that really stood out for me was with Susan and Brian. That was the first time we've had like two guests on at the same time. So we were a quadrangle, which is kind of cool. And just her story was so powerful and moving and inspiring. But that's what I love about the show, is just always starting by hearing their story and how they came to do what they're doing and who they've developed themselves to be is really always interesting to me.
Yeah, that actually reminded me of another one that really stood out to me was the conversation we had around Alzheimer's and dementia.
Yeah.
And that conversation really stuck out because it was just an area of expertise that I had not really spent much time in. Like I knew the very, very cursory set of information about it, but through that conversation, I was much, much better able to get a grasp on the sort of challenges and experiences people who have those things are going through and sort of what their perspective is like. And it just entirely opened up a new window that I had never seen that sort of experience from. So that's another one that really stood out for me.
Yeah, that was a good, interesting one. Yeah, I've learned a lot. It's really always interesting to add more tools to our own toolboxes to be able to share with others or just use for ourselves. It's pretty awesome. So let's transition to our past guest clips that we actually invited our past guests. I sent out an email to all our past guests. We got a handful of responses from them to ask them a few questions on their thoughts about happiness. So we're going to roll the clip. The first question that we asked our past guests is, what would you say to someone who wants to be happier?
I would ask the person what they mean by happiness. So defining it, first of all, because that means different things for different people. And so as a therapist, that's a really interesting question. I always ask people, like, what do you mean by that? So oftentimes that might mean I just want more contentment in my life as opposed to happiness. Those are kind of interchangeable words, but I think it's important to make that distinction, because happiness is, like, I would consider it kind of more of a fleeting emotion, happy, sad, mad, proud, etc. Like, it could be changeable. So I'd want to find out, like, do you mean contentment? Do you mean satisfaction? Like, what does that mean? What does happiness look like for you? So that's the first thing I would do, is like ask, what's the definition? Going from that, a couple things too, is I'd ask them like what their expectations are, because I think you can't be happy all the time, right? Like, that's not an attainable thing. That's just not real. And I think that can be, I think, especially with social media, you see people's highlight reels on their Instagrams, and everyone's happy, and they're not showing. There's not a lot of shows called sad talks, right? But no, I mean, your show is great, and it's important because you talk about what it means to be happy, and there's useful tools and how to get there. But I think the people in general can suffer from this syndrome of like everyone else is happy and I'm not, because look, they're having all this fun. You don't really see what's going on behind the scenes, the times when they're hit with challenges and may feel defeated or sad or depressed. So, if someone asked me like, how do I be more happy? I would, first of all, like, what do you mean by that? How do you define that? And then what are your expectations? Right. And even maybe get more specific, like, what are you doing on a daily basis that's maintaining that level of, say, contentment or satisfaction? So getting it down to actually, what are you doing? Because it's a concept, right? Oh, I want to be happy. Well, what does that mean in the real world where the rubber meets the road? Like, what are you doing? Are you going on vacations regularly? Are you not working too much? Are you balanced in the domains of your life?
What would I say to someone who wants to be happier? I think there are 3 things to do. There's like a zillion things to do, right? So I'm just going to say the 3 things that come to mind are practicing gratitude. There's just so much that, it depends on like where our antenna is focused. Are we really tuned into everything that's going wrong? Because we could really create a case of how many things are going wrong in our lives, in our worlds. And then we can create a narrative, and that would just really contribute to just a sense of despair, hopelessness, overwhelm. Practicing gratitude is almost like breaking that spell and recognizing what is good. It's not to say that the bad things aren't happening, but it's also to interrupt perhaps the pattern of noticing all the bad and being driven crazy by all the bad, and seeing where there is abundance, where there is love, where there is beauty, where there is comfort, where there is delight, where there is joy, and really amplifying that perspective. So that is one. Also say, practicing mindfulness. Really just, again, it's this idea of interrupting habits of thought that lead to our suffering and bearing witness to our pain and to our emotions and to our thoughts and our beliefs, and recognize that we are not our pain, our thoughts, and our beliefs, but those are often just constellations of thoughts, feelings, and beliefs that we're practicing that contribute to our suffering. And just tuning into the body and saying, okay, where do I feel this? It's not who I am. It's just what I'm feeling. And then I have 4. I'm going to cheat. I said I had 3, but I have 4.
Go for it. Totally.
One is a spiritual relationship, however you define that, recognizing this illusion that we are all separate, illusion, and that our time on this planet is temporary, and, connecting to that there, for me, I would say that there is love and light and unity, and that our time here is precious. And then the last one is just laughter, the ridiculousness of it all, and good food. Now I say 5.
Happiness is an emotion, and just like any emotion, if we want to experience more of it, then we need to cultivate it. And in order to cultivate happiness, we need to do the things that make us happy. So at a simplistic level, this is basically us saying to ourselves, hey, I like writing, so I should write more often. Or I like playing basketball, so I should play basketball more often. There's a million different activities that we could name here, but the general concept is the same, and it's that we need to identify the activities that spark joy within us, and then once we've done that, we need to put those activities on our calendar or engage in them more regularly. Now, of course, how we spend our time varies, but a lot of us spend a lot of that time in, let's say, school or various careers, and so another way of looking at my answer here is basically saying to ourselves, if where I'm spending most of my time is in pursuits that I don't enjoy, then it's going to be very hard for me to be happy. On the career side, it's basically like if I'm spending 40, 50, 60 hours a week in a job that isn't meaningful, isn't rewarding, isn't joy producing, then it's going to be very hard for me to cultivate that emotion that I'm seeking, right? So at both a high and low level, in order to find more happiness, we need to look critically at our lives and ask ourselves, like, are the things that I'm engaging in regularly rewarding and happiness producing for me? And if the answer is no, then to the degree that we're able, we should seek to make some changes.
I would say you just need to make the decision that that's what you want to be. And I know it sounds really generic, but I'm a really big believer that the first step to getting whatever it is you want is actually committing that it is something that you want. Because if anything in life, if you really don't commit to wanting it, you're not going to do it. I think everyone's felt that way. We can have a goal for a job or something, and you're like, well, why are you sitting around? I ask myself all the time. There's a lot of things that I want to do with my life, and I'm like, why aren't I doing it? And I'll have all of these excuses like I'm tired or this or that. And at the end of the day, I think, well, I must want the other things like more and not want it enough yet, because when I want it, I will take action. So I think the first step is you have to make the decision that that's 100% what you want, and you're going to do whatever it takes to be there. And then step 2 is start figuring out how you're going to make it happen.
All right. So that was what our past guests thought people should know if they want to be happier. And Donovan, do you have any thoughts you want to reflect on about what any of our guests said?
Yeah, I feel like it's just a nice cross section of sort of the discussion around happiness, right? There is initially at the highest level, sort of this confusion around when someone says, I want to be happy. Well, what is it that you're talking about? Because it actually makes a pretty big difference to what it is that you need to work on or try to change or adjust or whatever else. And then, there are a number of things that generally are shown to produce happiness, like gratitude, right? These sorts of things, if you cultivate them, it's not 100%, but almost everyone benefits from these things to a large degree. And then there's also, some of these other pieces around how do you choose to spend your time, right? I just think it's a really nice cross section of sort of the discussion around happiness, and it shows how something that seems so simple actually touches just a countless number of realms, and there is a myriad of different angles and approaches that you can take in sort of cultivating this sort of feeling. What about you?
Yeah, I really love what Michael said about, and I know we've touched on this before in past episodes, but I love that he said that, like, you can't have the expectation to be happy all the time. That's unrealistic and not attainable, and setting you up almost for failure. And to understand that emotions, there's highs and lows, and it's all part of the human experience. So I love what he said about that. I resonate with everything that was said by all our guests, but I also appreciate what Lindsay had to say about, taking action and deciding that this is what you want and propelling yourself to do what it takes to get there. And there are steps that you can take. There's like so many tools in the toolbox that you can access. But yeah, that being said, let's go to our next question that we asked our guests. This is kind of the reverse question in a way. Like, what's a myth that prevents people from being happy? So let's see what some of our guests had to say about that.
All this, like I heard at a professor in in college who said this, and he said, it's the crock of shoulds. It's the expectation that things should be vastly different than they are, that you should be taller, skinnier, shorter, richer, whatever it is that you think you should be. It keeps us from being in the present moment and recognizing all that is beautiful and fabulous and full of love in the moment. So those myths about what should be, whenever we start using the word should, I like to put crock of in front of it. That we're so just connected to like consumerism. I think that's a real threat. And so the myth that happiness comes from achieving a certain level of financial well-being or owning things is a myth that keeps us from really being connected to one another, because truly happiness also, we can talk about happiness forever, is about relationship and love.
I think people think that happy people are just naturally happy all the time. I think that's a really big myth. Because I'm happy, I'm positive, and everyone's like, but do you not deal with your problems? Like, people think because I'm happy that I don't deal with my problems. They think that you can just flip a switch and be happy all the time. And that's definitely not the case at all. It's really a lifestyle to be happy. Like, I'm sure and you would know better than me, like, I'm sure you could be predisposed to be more optimistic than not to a degree. I've definitely been more predisposed to be happier, but it also, I really make an effort. It's like, if you work out every day, you're going to get muscles in your body. Well, I work out my mind every day. So people see me happy, but they don't see all the times I'm crying, or times I've been depressed and not able to get out of bed or function, times where I'm sitting there being like, wow, I like need help. Like I get acupuncture, like I have so many routines that I have gotten the habit of doing, that when I'm sad, like I journal. Like I recently, like when the world started opening up from the pandemic, I was really depressed. My parents were like, why aren't you responding to us? Why can't you concentrate? I don't think I'd ever been depressed like that in my life. And my parents didn't know what was going on. And I was like, I think I'm depressed. Like, cause they'd be like, snap out of it. And I couldn't, but I sat there and I had the realization that I need like help. So I got the help that I needed. And if you would have looked at my journal, like I literally wrote like 60 pages in my journal. Like I journal like my feelings within like a few days. I listened to like a million audiobooks. Like I started going for walks, and it's like a real lifestyle. Like it's not like you just snap a finger and you're happy all the time. You really have to work at it. And then you get better at it, like anything that you practice at. But yeah, you can like cultivate to be happy. You're not just like happy, doesn't mean that like you don't deal with things. Like I definitely will deal with things and cry and not get out of bed and, have panic attacks. I have everything. I think the way I think about it is I just really am like, this isn't going to be forever. Even if it felt like, forever, I just like, I know that I was happy once before. So I know that I can be it again eventually.
I'll call this one the I'll be happy when myth. It's the idea that we need certain things in our lives to occur, or we need to become particular people, or make a certain amount of money before we can allow ourselves to be joyous. A simple example would be telling ourselves that we can't be happy until we buy the new Mercedes that we've been looking at. Now, where we get into trouble with this myth is when it creates a self-fulfilling prophecy for us, where we say to ourselves, I don't have X, and I told myself that I needed that thing in order to be happy, and so because I don't have it, I can't be happy. And maybe it takes us a long time to get there, and so we don't allow ourselves to be happy because we want to keep up with the subconscious belief that we've created for ourselves. Another problem associated with it is that sometimes we create such high expectations for our goals and the places that we want to get to in life that when we finally get there, we find them to be disappointments or letdowns, and that can create all sorts of despair in our lives, creating this vicious cycle of us saying to ourselves, well, I wasn't happy in the first place, then I finally got it, I'm still not happy, can I ever be happy? Is this all there is? And obviously that's a really dangerous place to be as well. But I think how we dispel this myth is going back to the first question and saying to ourselves, hey, I have to remember that happiness is just an emotion. And I can cultivate that emotion in all different sorts of ways. And if we think back to, let's say, childhood, right? It was like, yeah, maybe sometimes we told our parents we needed a particular video game or a toy before we could be happy. But if we were really honest with ourselves, we would remember that we were happy just being immersed in the moment, being present, playing with our friends, playing a video game that we already owned, running around outside, right? And so that goes back to the idea of cultivating the emotion of happiness. And so even though adults are different than children, and we may have more problems or less time on our hands, we can still cultivate that emotion as well. We don't necessarily need that new Mercedes off in the distance to make us happy.
A myth that you have to be happy all the time, or that you should expect to be happy all the time, or that there won't be sadness or depression or challenges or anxiety. Because I think that if you sort of vilify anxiety or challenges or feeling down, then that makes them kind of bigger than they are. And happiness is kind of like the hero or something that's going to save you from that negativity. And so I think that's a myth. There is just not that you want to be down or sad or overwhelmed by challenges, but you can expect, like, life is going to hit you with stuff. Like, it happens to every human on the planet. Like, stuff will happen to challenge you. Now, hopefully not too much, but I think the myth of being like, I don't want challenges in my life. Like, I'm afraid of that. I'm afraid of being anxious, maybe speaking in front of a group. I want to avoid, so that happiness can be like this panacea. Like, I just want to be happy. and I don't want these challenges. And so I think the myth would be like, yeah, it's how can you lean into some of the challenges and reframe them as maybe opportunities or stuff that everyone goes through, not just poor me, you know? So using happiness as a way to augment your life as opposed to being like a savior in your life. So I think that might be a myth right there. Yeah.
All right. Those were some pretty great myths that we dispelled about happiness from our guests. I really liked what Brian said about cultivating happiness, and that it's an ongoing process. It's not like, oh, I arrived to happiness and then I'm done working. No, it's a journey, it's a process, it's a lifetime commitment in a way.
Yeah, I think the thing that stood out, or like the overarching theme, is sort of people's relationship with the idea of happiness, right? Like there's a lot of myths surrounding expectations of happiness and how we should sort of feel and how life should go and these sorts of things. And that's what I see around me a lot as well. And I think that's one of the biggest places that work can sort of be done, is challenging some of your conceptions around your relationship with happiness, like expecting to be happy all the time, like expecting that you should just be able to be happy and it's not tied to actions, or all these things that were mentioned. At a high level, it's just sort of like cultivating a realistic relationship with the idea of happiness and how it works and how it functions can do a lot of work for people.
Yeah, absolutely. Great. So we do have one last fun clip from our past guests. I wanted to inquiry on, it's really an honor and privilege that we've had so many incredible guests on our show, and that people really resonate with our mission of creating more happiness in the world and giving them practical tools to do so. So we asked our past guests, what do they love about Happy Talks? And we got some great responses. So let's check them out.
I like that you just give people advice on being happy. I think it's something that people need. Like it's something, like I said earlier, it's something that I research. Like I may be naturally predisposed to be happy, but I study being happy too. And I think people not everyone has those resources. So to have those resources and hear directly from other people and really be able to understand how to be, I think that's the best thing what you're doing. I mean, just even thinking like this is a happy talk, I feel happy. So I think it's just something that the world needs more of, and that's probably my favorite part. You also give like the stories, but you're also your professional opinion. So it's not just like I have a motivational blog and stuff, and I'm talking and from my experiences, but I don't have like a degree in these sort of things. It's just my own experiences. So having the professional opinion of it, I think really also is even more impactful.
I would say just the mission that you have of spreading positivity and solutions for people out there. There's so many podcasts where people just rant, and kind of get angry and self-righteous. And there's tons of podcasts like this. And so yours is like an antidote to that. So I think just generally your mission of wanting to deliver perspectives and skills on happiness and get people thinking and leaning into like, how can I solve my problems? So yeah, your mission. I try to have a regular diet of good podcasts that's either going to give me like positive energy. There's a lot of podcasts too that I listen to where I get solutions, ones that make me think critically. I try to stay away from sort of like called like the junk food podcasts, where it's you can get angry and kind of rant and it's gossipy or whatever. So yeah, I think that it just makes my life better, your podcast, and elevates my mood. And so it's in the rotation.
Well, there's a whole lot to love about the show, but I'll try to keep things short here. First off, I love the openness, the honesty, and the wide array of happiness-related topics covered on the show. Secondly, I love how each conversation adds value in a unique way, given the fact that there are a lot of different subjects covered. And finally, I love how Dr. Alice and Donovan have different backgrounds and perspectives. I think that when they sit down and have conversations, they're able to go more in depth, ask different questions, take things in different directions, unique fashions than, let's say, two folks of the same background might be able to.
Well, I love that you have Happy Talks. I mean, that we're elevating that conversation. It's not a conversation about how do you earn more money. There's nothing wrong with money. I adore money. Like, it's a wonderful thing, but it's not the end all be all, and that you're having conversations that help people learn and grow and develop, and focus on moments of happiness. I don't think the expectation is that we should be happy all the time. The expectation is that we should have meaningful lives and that we should be continually growing, but that we are, and you are with those conversations, being very intentional about finding ways to experience joy.
Oh, that was very sweet of everyone to share. Do you have any thoughts, Donovan?
It's just them, I appreciate them, and I'm just grateful that we were able to have those guests as well as all the other people who are willing to come on the show and hang out with us and spend some time talking about topics of interest, and just really appreciative of that opportunity.
Yeah, me too. Thank you to all our past guests, whether you were able to send us a little clip for our 100th episode or not. We really appreciate all that you've helped our show grow and just offer, tools and tips and experiences and stories to help people have happier lives. And, that's what we're all about. So it's exciting to just be a part of that journey all together. We're all on this journey and path to happiness. So what's next for Happy Talks is what we're going to be talking about next. So just a little about where we're taking our show. I don't know, Donovan, if you want to get the ball rolling and tell them what we're up to, you're welcome to, and I can add on. Do you have any initial thoughts?
Sure. Yeah. So I think, we've been thinking a lot about sort of the direction we want to take the show and how we want to improve things, and what can make us make this even more concrete than it already is. And one of the things we've noticed, and the feed probably looks this way from the last couple of episodes, is that we don't want to just do a guest show. We also don't want to just do conversations between us. So we'll probably have some nice mix between the two. And then another thing around guests, we wanted to sort of focus in on making the conversations really authentic and very conversational. We wanted to move away a little bit from sort of this interview style in terms of question, answer, and move more towards sort of a discussion or conversation amongst individuals who sort of all have shared interests, and with the hopes that will bring out a little bit more of a fluid and fruitful conversation, as opposed to sort of, some of the guests we've had get interviewed multiple times a week and sort of end up saying and doing the same things over and over again, which is not bad on the surface, but we just want to sort of break that pattern, that interview pattern a little bit, and move more towards the conversational side. I don't know what else there was that you might want to cover on that.
Yeah, no, you described it pretty well of where we want to take the show, is to have it be more conversational, and it's like you're just chatting with some friends or colleagues, and we want our listeners and our viewers to just feel like, they're part of this conversation, that, we all have a lot of different perspectives and opinions. That's something Brian had touched on, is like, me and you, just the two of us, Donovan, have a lot of perspectives on a variety of topics about happiness. So we're just, when we bring on guests, we appreciate and acknowledge their expertise, and they're welcome to share some of that. But we want to have it feel like, we're having a conversation among friends. And so you can really feel a little more connected and authentic, and maybe that'll create more happiness in our own way, and our own continuing our mission of creating more happiness in the world. That's what we're up to. So it'll be shift. I know we had a huge string of guests, and then we had quite a string of just the two of us, because we needed a little bit of a break just to decompress and just have a conversation between the two of us. But yeah, our plan is to kind of create a more even mix between the two and not just be string of guests and string of not. And the guests that we bring on, we want them to just feel like they're family and friends and just hanging out with us, having a dialogue about whatever topic that we choose for that week. Is there anything, Donovan, that you feel like our viewers or listeners should know, or actually that brings me to my next point. I just asked you a question, but I forgot, like, the other thing we want and need, and Donovan might have some other thoughts about this, is like, we want to hear from you, our listeners, our viewers, whether you're finding us on YouTube or on our podcast. We want to talk with you and interact with you. So leave some comments in our, if you're on YouTube, leave it in the YouTube comments. If you're listening on a podcast, shoot us a DM on Instagram or send us an email or find us. There's, links to how to reach out to us if you want to chat with us. So we really do value you, our listeners, absolutely, for just being a part of this journey. It's been 2 years in the making, and we always appreciate everything that you have to offer. And we want to be able to support you in the best way we can and to elevate those conversations about conversations that you want to know about. So do you have anything to add to that, Donovan?
Not a whole lot. It's mostly the same sort of sentiment, which is, if you're listening or watching and there are topics that you want us to cover or questions that you have, we would love to know what it is exactly that people are looking for and just engage with our audience a bit more and a bit more directly. We're more than happy to sort of source ideas from out there in the world. Yes, we've come up with some ideas, but I'm sure there are all kinds of topics that we will not stumble on unless someone kind of reaches out and asks questions or leaves some sort of comment saying like, hey, you should do a show on this, or could you look into this for us? And in the past with other projects I've done, that's been one of the most meaningful and fruitful source of sort of ideas for creating content. So I really love to tap into anyone that's listening and sort of get you all more involved.
Yeah, we want to interact with you. We want to talk with you. And, I'm open to also, if you have feedback for us on how we can improve our show, Donovan and I are committed to our own growth as creators, as just people in general, to people that are happier. So, be respectful and not mean, ideally, but we can't say that we'll take on everyone's advice because there's only so much we can do. We'll take it on if it seems appropriate and fitting to the show. But we're always open and receptive to hearing what you have to say, and we really appreciate your feedback. So reach out to us, send us a DM or a comment in the link below, whatever that might be. We appreciate you guys, and we really value you tuning in every week, or if it's once in a while, that's okay. But we hope you tune in a little bit more because we're going to be bringing some pretty fun conversations for sure. Yeah. So I don't know if we have anything else, any remaining things to share, celebrate, last final hurrah party food. Let's get to another 100 episodes. Who knows? Maybe one day we'll get to the 1,000th episode, and that will be crazy cool and awesome.
That'll be cool. It's been a good journey so far, and I'm excited to see what we sort of develop and come up with next.
Yeah, me too. Happy 100th. Thanks so much for watching. If you enjoyed this video, be sure to like it and then go and subscribe to my channel and ring the bell so you get notified when the next video comes out. And if you check out in the description below, go to my website where you can get my free fast and easy guide to stress relief. Thanks again for checking us out, and we'll see you next time.